A terrified 12-year-old black girl ran to a stranger millionaire in front of a luxury building. When she whispered words in his ear, the man turned pale and discreetly reached for his phone. The bell rang at 3:15 p.m. Jasmine grabbed her backpack from her locker, the same way she did every day after school. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Another text from Mom. "Remember to let me know when you get to the library, baby." Jasmine pulled out her phone, frowning at the 5% battery warning flashing on the screen. She'd forgotten to charge it during lunch again. "Okay, Mom. Battery's almost dead, though. Might not last." She pushed through the heavy front doors of Lincoln Middle School, joining the stream of students flooding onto the sidewalk. The autumn air hit her face, crisp and cool. Most kids turned left toward the bus loop or the parent pickup line. Jasmine went right. The walk to the library usually took 20 minutes. She'd done it so many times she could probably do it with her eyes closed. Past the school crossing guard, down Cedar Street, through the fancy neighborhood with the big houses, then 3 blocks to the public library. Mom's rules played in her head like a familiar song. Stay alert. Keep your phone ready. Walk where people can see you. Don't talk to strangers. If something feels wrong, trust your gut. Jasmine adjusted her backpack straps, her worn sneakers scuffing against the concrete. The crossing guard waved her across, and she stepped into the quiet residential streets. The houses here were different from her apartment complex. Wide driveways, perfectly trimmed lawns, security system signs stuck in flower beds. A metallic gray sedan drove past. Jasmine barely noticed it, too busy checking her phone again. 4% now. Great, she muttered, quickening her pace. The sooner she got to the library, the better. The streets were mostly empty at this time. A woman walking a dog, a delivery truck, an old man getting his mail. Normal afternoon stuff. But when the same gray sedan passed by again, driving slower this time, something cold settled in Jasmine's stomach. She remembered the news story Mom had been watching last week. Something about suspicious vehicles in nearby neighborhoods. She hadn't paid much attention then. Mom always watched the local news and worried about everything. But now, the phone felt heavy in her pocket. She pulled it out, fingers shaking slightly as she tried to call Mom. The screen went black before she could hit dial. No, no, no. Jasmine pressed the power button repeatedly. Nothing. Dead. Leaves crunched under her feet as she walked faster. It was fine. Everything was fine. Probably just being paranoid like Mom. The library was only 10 minutes away now. The sedan passed by again, even slower. Close enough that Jasmine could hear the engine's low purr. Close enough to see dark-tinted windows. Close enough to make her heart slam against her ribs. She thought about stopping at one of the houses, knocking on a stranger's door. But what if nobody answered? What if they didn't want to help? What if the car pulled ahead and parked at the curb about 50 feet in front of her? The engine kept running. Jasmine stopped walking. Her legs felt heavy, her chest tight. The driver's door opened slightly. Through the panic flooding her mind, she spotted something ahead, a cluster of office buildings. Glass and steel and concrete. People in business clothes walking in and out. Security cameras over the doors. A guard desk visible through the windows. Mom's voice echoed in her head. If you're ever scared, find a public place. Find people. A man in an expensive-looking suit was walking out of the building. Tall, gray hair, briefcase in hand. He looked important. Safe. The sound of a car door closing behind her made Jasmine's breath catch. Footsteps on the sidewalk. Getting closer. She had to decide. Now, looking at the businessman again, she remembered what Officer Martinez had said during their school safety assembly last month. If you're being followed, find an adult you trust. If there's no one you know, look for authority figures, police officers, security guards, business people in professional settings. The footsteps were getting closer. The gray-haired man was about to walk to his car. It was now or never. Jasmine's heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Her palms were sweaty. Her legs shook, but she forced herself to move, one foot in front of the other, toward the businessman who represented her only chance at safety. Behind her, the footsteps quickened. Jasmine's legs felt like lead as she walked toward the businessman. Her mind raced back to Officer Martinez's words from that school assembly. If you need help, be direct. Be clear. Make sure they understand you're in danger. The footsteps behind her grew louder. Closer. She glanced at the office building. Through the glass doors, she could see a security guard at his desk, scrolling on his phone. Too far to help. Not enough time to run inside. The gray sedan was still there, driver's door slightly open, engine running. A shadow moved inside. Officer Martinez's voice played in her head again. Remember, kids. Bad people often work in pairs. One to chase, one to grab. Sweat trickled down Jasmine's back despite the cool air. The businessman was checking his watch now, keys in hand. About to leave. Keep walking normally, she whispered to herself, Mom's constant safety lessons kicking in. Don't run. Don't look scared. But her hands were shaking. Her chest felt tight. The world seemed to blur around the edges. More footsteps joined the first set. 2 people behind her now. The businessman looked up from his watch, and for a moment, their eyes met. He had kind eyes, Jasmine thought. The sort that reminded her of her 4th grade teacher, Mr. Johnson, who always helped students when they were in trouble. A car door slammed behind her. Her heart jumped. Just a few more steps, she told herself. Just a few more. The businessman was reaching for his car keys now. About to turn away. Jasmine's throat felt dry. She tried to swallow but couldn't. Hey, little girl. A man's voice called from behind. Deep. Threatening. She didn't turn around. Couldn't turn around. The businessman must have heard it too because he paused, keys halfway to his car door. Another voice. Quieter. Closer. Just want to talk to you for a minute. Jasmine's whole body was trembling now. She could see the businessman's face change as he heard the voices, a slight frown crossing his features. The security guard inside was still looking at his phone, oblivious. A memory flashed through Jasmine's mind. Her mother's face that morning, kissing her goodbye. Be careful out there, baby. The world isn't always kind to little black girls. The footsteps were so close now she could almost feel them. I said stop, girl. The businessman was fully alert now, his hand frozen on his car door handle, watching the scene unfold. Jasmine's mind raced through her options. The office building in trance was 30 feet away. Too far. The street was empty. No cars passing by. No pedestrians. Just her, the businessman, and the men behind her. She remembered what her mother always said. Trust your instincts, baby. If something feels wrong, it is wrong. Everything felt wrong. The businessman was starting to turn toward his car again, uncertainty on his face. No, Jasmine thought. Don't leave. Please don't leave. The footsteps were almost upon her now. She could hear heavy breathing. In that moment, another memory surfaced, a self-defense class at the community center last summer. The instructor, a tough-looking woman with arms like steel, had said, sometimes the best defense is finding the right ally. The businessman was her ally. Had to be. Her only chance. She forced her legs to move faster, closing the distance between them. Her heart was beating so hard she thought it might explode. 10 feet away now. 8. 6. A hand reached for her backpack from behind. 5 feet. 4. The businessman was looking right at her now, seeing something in her face that made him pause. 3 feet. 2. Hey! One of the men behind her shouted. 1 foot. The businessman's expression changed from uncertainty to concern as he saw the fear in her eyes. This was it. Her moment to act. To speak. To save herself. She opened her mouth, praying her voice wouldn't fail her. The hand grabbing for her backpack was inches away. Please, Jasmine whispered, her voice shaking. Please pretend you know me. The businessman's eyes widened, darting from her terrified face to the man behind her. In that split second, understanding flashed across his features. Jasmine, he called out, his voice warm and familiar, as if he'd known her for years. There you are. I was starting to worry. Relief flooded through her body so fast it made her dizzy. He understood. He was going to help. Sorry I'm late, she managed to say, her voice trembling less now. The footsteps behind her slowed. The businessman smoothly stepped forward, placing himself between her and the approaching men. Your mom called to say you might need a ride today. Good thing I waited. Jasmine heard the footsteps stop completely. She didn't dare look back. I'm Mr. Thompson, the businessman said quietly to her, loud enough for the men to hear but soft enough to seem private. His hand gently touched her shoulder, protective but not threatening. Let's get you inside where it's safe. The security guard inside the building finally looked up from his phone, noticing the scene unfolding outside. "Hey," one of the men called out. "We just wanted to ask her something." Mr. Thompson turned slightly, keeping Jasmine partly behind him. His voice was calm but firm. "I don't believe she wants to talk to you, gentlemen." Jasmine could feel him pressing something in his pocket. A phone. Dialing. The security guard was standing now, moving toward the door. "Mind your own business, old man," the second man growled. "This doesn't concern you." Mr. Thompson's hand squeezed Jasmine's shoulder reassuringly. "Actually, it does concern me. You see, I'm a family friend, and I don't appreciate strangers following young girls on the street." His phone was definitely connected now. Jasmine could hear the faint voice of a 911 operator. 911, what's your emergency? The men must have heard it too because they started backing away. "Whatever," the first man muttered. "Wasn't nothing anyway." Mr. Thompson kept his position between Jasmine and the men, speaking clearly but quietly into his pocket. "Yes, outside Thompson Financial on Cedar Street. Two men following a young girl. Dark gray sedan, partial plate visible." The security guard pushed through the glass doors, radio in hand. One of the men cursed under his breath. They both turned and walked quickly back to their car. "Stay with me," Mr. Thompson said softly to Jasmine as the sedan's engine revved. "Help is coming." The car peeled away from the curb, tires squealing against the pavement. Jasmine caught a glimpse of the license plate as it sped past. "Did you see that?" Mr. Thompson asked, already nodding. "XJ 529, Jasmine finished, surprising herself. She'd been more observant than she realized. The security guard reached them, radio crackling. "Police are 2 minutes out." "You okay, sir?" "Miss?" Mr. Thompson's hand was still steady on Jasmine's shoulder. "We will be. Thank you. John, could you call up to my office? Have Sarah contact this young lady's mother." "Right away, Mr. Thompson." Jasmine's legs finally gave out. She started to sink to the ground, but Mr. Thompson caught her gently. "It's okay," he said softly. "You're safe now. You did exactly the right thing." Police sirens wailed in the distance, getting closer. "My mom," Jasmine managed to say. "My phone died. She'll be so worried." "We'll call her right now," Mr. Thompson assured her. "You're very brave. You know that? What you did, approaching me, asking for help, that was incredibly smart." The first police car rounded the corner, lights flashing. Jasmine looked up at Mr. Thompson, tears finally spilling down her cheeks. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for believing me." He smiled kindly. "Thank you for trusting me." The police car pulled up to the curb, and 2 officers jumped out. More sirens approached from different directions. As the officers hurried toward them, Jasmine realized something. Her legs weren't shaking anymore. Her heart was slowing down. She was safe. Mr. Thompson kept his hand on her shoulder as he turned to speak with the police. His presence was solid, reassuring, like a shield against the fear that had almost overwhelmed her just minutes ago. She'd done it. She'd escaped. She'd survived. And now, as she heard one officer radio in the license plate number and another ask her for her mother's contact information, Jasmine knew the worst was over. But something else was just beginning. "Can you tell us exactly what happened?" Officer Rodriguez asked, her notepad ready as she sat across from Jasmine in Mr. Thompson's office. The room was warm and safe, with large windows overlooking the street where everything had unfolded just 30 minutes ago. Jasmine's hands were wrapped around a cup of hot chocolate that Mr. Thompson's assistant, Sarah, had brought her. Her mother was on her way, already called by both the police and Sarah using Mr. Thompson's office phone. "I was walking to the library," Jasmine began, her voice stronger now. "Like I do every day after school." Officer Rodriguez nodded encouragingly while her partner, Officer Chen, stood by the door, radio quietly crackling with updates about the search for the gray sedan. "I saw the car pass by 3 times, Jasmine continued. "The first time, I didn't think much about it. But then it kept coming back, driving slower each time." Mr. Thompson sat quietly in a chair nearby, his presence still reassuring. He'd insisted on staying until Jasmine's mother arrived, telling Sarah to reschedule his afternoon meetings. "Did you see the men's faces?" Officer Rodriguez asked gently. Jasmine shook her head. "Not clearly. They stayed behind me mostly. One was tall, wearing a gray hoodie. The other one had on a black jacket. They both sounded young, maybe in their 20s. "That's very helpful," Officer Rodriguez said, writing quickly. Can you tell me what made you decide to approach Mr. Thompson? Jasmine took a sip of hot chocolate, remembering those terrifying moments. My phone was dead, so I couldn't call Mom. I remembered what we learned in school about finding safe adults if you're in trouble. Mr. Thompson looked important, professional, like someone who could help. You made an excellent choice, Officer Chen said from his position by the door. Most predators avoid confrontations with authority figures. The word predators made Jasmine shiver slightly. Mr. Thompson noticed and spoke up. Perhaps we could take a brief break, he suggested. Give Jasmine a moment to collect her thoughts. Officer Rodriguez smiled kindly. Of course. I'll step out and check on the status of the search. As the officers moved to the door, Sarah burst in, slightly out of breath. Mr. Thompson, Jasmine's mother is here. Mom! Jasmine stood up, the hot chocolate forgotten. Gloria Williams rushed into the office, her nursing scrubs wrinkled from running from the parking lot. Baby! Oh, my baby! Jasmine fell into her mother's arms, tears starting again. Mom, I'm sorry. My phone died, and I couldn't call. And baby, Gloria held her daughter tight, her own tears falling. You're safe. That's all that matters. Mr. Thompson stood quietly, giving them space. Officer Rodriguez stepped back into the room, giving mother and daughter a moment before speaking. Mrs. Williams, I'm Officer Rodriguez. Your daughter showed incredible presence of mind today. Gloria kept one arm around Jasmine as she turned to face the officer. What exactly happened? They just told me there were men following her. As Officer Rodriguez explained the situation, Gloria's arm tightened around Jasmine. When the officer described how Jasmine had approached Mr. Thompson, Gloria turned to face him. Thank you, she said, her voice thick with emotion. Thank you for helping my baby. Mr. Thompson shook his head. Your daughter helped herself, Mrs. Williams. She made all the right decisions. I just played my part. Still, Gloria insisted, not everyone would have understood. Not everyone would have helped a young black girl running up to them on the street. The room fell silent for a moment, the weight of her words hanging in the air. Officer Chen's radio crackled again. He stepped out to respond, then returned with a serious expression. We've got a possible match on the vehicle, he announced. It was spotted leaving the area headed east. Units are in pursuit. Gloria pulled Jasmine closer. Will you need my daughter for anything else? I'd like to take her home. Officer Rodriguez closed her notebook. We have enough for now. We'll need you both to come to the station tomorrow to give a formal statement. But that can wait. I'll have my driver take you home, Mr. Thompson offered. It's safer than waiting for a cab. Oh, no. We couldn't impose Gloria started. Please, Mr. Thompson insisted. It would make me feel better knowing you got home safely. Jasmine looked up at her mother. Can we, Mom? Please. Gloria nodded slowly. Thank you, Mr. Thompson, for everything. As Sarah went to arrange the car, Officer Rodriguez handed Gloria her card. Call us if you remember anything else, Jasmine. You did great today. Mr. Thompson walked them to the elevator, his hand briefly touching Jasmine's shoulder one last time. You're welcome to use my office as a safe spot anytime you're walking home. Sarah will know to expect you. In the elevator, Gloria held Jasmine close, her heart still racing from the fear of almost losing her daughter. Baby, I'm so proud of you. So proud. But also so scared. I know, Mom, Jasmine whispered. Me too. The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek black car waiting at the curb, a uniformed driver holding the door open. As they settled into the back seat, Jasmine looked up at the office building one last time. She saw Mr. Thompson watching from his window, making sure they got safely into the car. She waved. He waved back. The car pulled away from the curb, and Jasmine finally let herself relax completely into her mother's arms, knowing she was truly safe at last. But the day's events had changed something inside her. She wasn't just a scared little girl anymore. She was a survivor. And somehow, she knew that mattered more than anything else. The police station buzzed with activity the next morning. Jasmine sat in an interview room with her mother, a cup of untouched water in front of her. Detective Sarah Martinez, no relation to Officer Martinez from school, sat across from them, reviewing yesterday's reports. The car was stolen, Detective Martinez said, looking up from her papers. We found it abandoned in a parking lot about 5 miles away. Gloria's hand tightened around Jasmine's. Did you find the men? Not yet, but we have good leads. The security cameras from Mr. Thompson's building caught clear images of both suspects. Jasmine straightened in her chair. Can I see them? Detective Martinez hesitated, glancing at Gloria, who nodded slowly. Okay, the detective said, turning her laptop around. Tell me if you recognize either of these men. The images were crisp, much clearer than Jasmine had expected. Two men, both young like she thought. One tall and lean, the other shorter but muscular. Both white, both with the kind of faces you might pass on the street without noticing. That's them, Jasmine said quietly. The tall one in the gray hoodie, he was the one who tried to grab my backpack. Detective Martinez nodded, making notes. We're running facial recognition. These aren't their first attempts at something like this. You mean they've done this before? Gloria's voice shook with anger. We've had reports of similar incidents in neighboring counties. Two men in a gray sedan, following young girls walking alone. Detective Martinez's face hardened. But thanks to Jasmine, we now have their faces. A knock at the door interrupted them. Officer Rodriguez stepped in, looking excited. Detective, we got a hit on the facial recognition. Both suspects have prior records. Detective Martinez stood. Excuse me for a moment. As soon as the door closed, Gloria pulled Jasmine into a tight hug. Baby, I don't know what I would have done if... Mom, Jasmine interrupted, her voice muffled against her mother's shoulder. I'm okay. Really? I know, baby. I know. Gloria pulled back, wiping her eyes. But things are going to change. No more walking alone. But Mom dash. No buts. We'll figure something out with the library. Maybe Mr. Thompson's office really can be a safe spot for you until I get off work. As if on cue, there was another knock. Officer Rodriguez returned, this time with Mr. Thompson behind her. Hope I'm not interrupting, he said, looking slightly out of place in his expensive suit among the utilitarian police furniture. Mr. Thompson, Jasmine smiled for the first time that morning. I wanted to check how you both were doing, he said, stepping into the room. And to make a proposal, if I may. Detective Martinez returned, nodding respectfully to Mr. Thompson before taking her seat. Mrs. Williams, Mr. Thompson began, I understand you work at Central Hospital. Gloria nodded. Yes, I'm a nurse in the ER. Evening shift, and Jasmine goes to the library after school to study until you get off work. Yes, but that's going to change now, Gloria said firmly. Actually, Mr. Thompson said, I have a suggestion. My building is roughly halfway between Jasmine's school and the library. We have a small study room off the main lobby that's rarely used. Jasmine would be welcome to use it as her after-school spot. Jasmine sat up straighter. Really? The security desk has clear sight lines to the room, Mr. Thompson continued. John, our head of security, already suggested it. And Sarah said she'd be happy to keep an eye on things too. Gloria hesitated. That's incredibly generous. But, Mom, please. Jasmine touched her mother's arm. It's safer than the library. And closer to school. Detective Martinez cleared her throat. If I may, Mrs. Williams? Having Jasmine in a secure building with surveillance and trained security would be much safer than the library. Especially until we apprehend these suspects. Gloria looked at her daughter's hopeful face, then back to Mr. Thompson. Why would you do this for us? Mr. Thompson's expression softened. Mrs. Williams, yesterday I watched your daughter face a terrifying situation with incredible courage and intelligence. She reminded me of my own daughter at that age, always studying, always determined. His voice caught slightly. I lost my Sarah to cancer 5 years ago. She was 15. The room fell silent. I couldn't help her, Mr. Thompson continued quietly. But I can help Jasmine. If you'll let me. Gloria stood, extending her hand to Mr. Thompson. Thank you. We accept. Jasmine jumped up and, before anyone could stop her, threw her arms around Mr. Thompson in a tight hug. He stiffened for a moment in surprise, then gently patted her back. Detective Martinez smiled at the scene, then turned serious again. We'll need you both to review these photo lineups. The rest of the morning passed in a blur of paperwork and procedures. By noon, they were done. As they left the police station, Mr. Thompson's car was waiting again. Sarah arranged everything, he explained. The study room will be ready on Monday. And here he handed Jasmine a small bag. Inside was a new phone, already charged. It's prepaid, he said quickly, seeing Gloria about to protest. All it can do is call and text designated numbers. You, the police, my office, emergency services. Sarah programmed it already. Jasmine held the phone like it was made of gold. Thank you, Mr. Thompson. He smiled, that same kind smile that had given Jasmine hope yesterday. You can call me David. You know. David, she repeated, trying it out. As they drove home, Jasmine noticed her mother seemed less tense than before. The new phone felt solid in her pocket, a lifeline, a promise of safety. Maybe, she thought, something good could come from something bad. She didn't know it yet, but she was right. All units, be advised. Suspect spotted heading north on Maple Drive in a black SUV. Officer Rodriguez's radio crackled to life as she sat in her patrol car outside Lincoln Middle School. It was Monday afternoon, Jasmine's first day walking to Mr. Thompson's building instead of the library. Copy that, she responded, starting her engine. I'm near their location. Inside the school, Jasmine packed her backpack slowly, checking her new phone for the third time. Full battery. She'd learned that lesson. You sure you don't want a ride? A friend Tanya asked, lingering by the lockers. I'm good, Jasmine replied, more confident than she felt. It's only a 10-minute walk, and the police are watching the route. Tanya frowned. I still can't believe those guys tried to grab you. My mom's been freaking out ever since she heard. Yeah, well, they didn't get me, Jasmine said, straightening her shoulders. And now I have a better place to study anyway. In some rich guy's office building. Tanya raised an eyebrow. Mr. Thompson's not just some rich guy, Jasmine defended. He helped me when I needed it. Not everyone would have. The hallway was nearly empty now. Jasmine took a deep breath and headed for the door. Text me when you get there. Tanya called after her. Outside, Officer Rodriguez's patrol car was clearly visible. The officer gave a small wave as Jasmine started walking. The same route, the same streets, but everything felt different now. Her phone buzzed. Mom checking in. On my way to Mr. Thompson's building now. Officer Rodriguez is following in her car. Okay, baby. Stay safe. Love you. Jasmine smiled, typing back quickly. Love you too. She was halfway there when Officer Rodriguez's radio crackled again. Suspect's vehicle spotted turning onto Cedar Street. All units respond. Cedar Street. Her street. Officer Rodriguez's car suddenly accelerated. Lights flashing but sirens silent. Up ahead, Jasmine saw what the officer had already spotted. A black SUV moving slowly down the street. Her heart started pounding. No, not again. The SUV's windows were tinted, but as it passed under a tree, Jasmine caught a glimpse inside. Two men. The same men. They saw her too. The SUV's engine roared. Officer Rodriguez's car shot forward, blocking the street. Jasmine, run. The officer's voice boomed through her patrol car's speaker. The building. Now. Jasmine ran. Behind her, she heard car doors slamming. Shouting. More sirens approaching. The office building was just ahead. Through the glass doors, she could see John the security guard already standing, hand on his radio. Stop right there. Officer Rodriguez's voice. Then, police. Don't move. Jasmine reached the doors just as John pushed them open. He pulled her inside quickly, positioning himself between her and the street. Through the glass, she saw everything unfold like a movie. The two men had tried to run in opposite directions, but they miscalculated. Police cars were arriving from both ends of the street, boxing them in. Officer Rodriguez had her gun drawn, focused on the taller man, the one who'd tried to grab Jasmine's backpack. He froze, hands slowly raising. His partner tried to make a break for it, darting between parked cars. He made it 3 steps before Officer Chen tackled him to the ground. Jasmine. Mr. Thompson's voice came from behind her. He must have seen everything from his office window. Are you all right? She nodded, unable to look away from the scene outside. More police cars arrived. Officers swarmed the area, handcuffs glinting in the afternoon sun. The tall man was on his knees now, being cuffed by Officer Rodriguez. His partner was already in the back of a patrol car, looking angry and defeated. I should call your mother, Mr. Thompson said, pulling out his phone. No, Jasmine said quickly. Not yet. Let me. She pulled out her new phone, hands steady as she dialed. Baby. Her mother answered on the first ring. What's wrong? They got them, Mom, Jasmine said, watching as Officer Rodriguez read the tall man his rights. The police caught them. It's over. There was a moment of silence. Then she heard her mother start to cry. I'm safe, Jasmine assured her. I'm in Mr. Thompson's building with John and everyone. The police were here the whole time. Don't move, Gloria said through her tears. I'm coming right now. Mom, you're at work. They'll understand. Just stay where you are. I will. Outside, the police were processing the scene. Officer Rodriguez looked up, caught Jasmine's eye through the glass, and gave her a thumbs up. Jasmine returned it, feeling something settle in her chest. A weight lifting. Mr. Thompson touched her shoulder gently. The study room is ready whenever you want it. Sarah brought in some snacks and drinks. Thanks, Jasmine said, still watching the scene outside. But I think I'll wait here until Mom comes. Is that okay? Of course. He pulled up a chair for her. Whatever makes you feel safe. Safe. The word echoed in her mind as she watched the patrol cars drive away, taking the men who'd tried to harm her far from her world. She was safe. Really, truly safe. And she'd helped make it happen. The evening news played quietly on the break room TV at Central Hospital's ER. Gloria Williams sat with her co-workers, watching the story unfold. 2 men were arrested today in connection with a series of attempted abductions across 3 counties, the news anchor reported. The breakthrough came after a failed attempt last week, when a 12-year-old girl escaped by seeking help from a local businessman. That's your baby girl they're talking about. Nancy, another nurse, squeezed Gloria's hand. Gloria nodded, unable to speak as security footage appeared on screen. Grainy images of Jasmine approaching Mr. Thompson, the men retreating, police cars arriving. The suspects, identified as Michael Reed and James Cooper, both 24, are facing multiple charges. The anchor continued. Gloria's phone buzzed. A text from Jasmine, in the study room with Sarah. Got math homework. Love you? She doing okay? Nancy asked, watching Gloria smile at her phone. Better than okay, Gloria replied, typing back quickly. She's stronger than I ever knew. The break room door opened. Dr. Martinez, no relation to the detective, stuck his head in. Gloria, there's someone here to see you. Detective Sarah Martinez stood in the hallway, holding a thick folder. Mrs. Williams, she said warmly. Got a minute? They found a quiet corner in the hospital cafeteria. The detective opened her folder, spreading out photographs. We found evidence in Reed and Cooper's apartment linking them to at least 5 other attempted abductions, she explained. But Jasmine was the only one who got away. The only one who fought back. Gloria stared at the photos, surveillance images from different locations, showing the same gray sedan following different young girls. Why are you showing me this? She asked quietly. Because tomorrow, we're holding a press conference. We'd like Jasmine to be there. Gloria's head snapped up. Absolutely not. She's been through enough. Mrs. Williams, Detective Martinez leaned forward. Your daughter's actions didn't just save herself. She helped us catch 2 predators who were becoming more aggressive with each attempt. The other families, they want to thank her. She's 12, Gloria protested. She's a hero, the detective countered. And her story could help other kids know what to do in similar situations. Gloria's phone buzzed again. Another text from Jasmine. Sarah's teaching me chess. Did you know Mr. Thompson has a chess trophy in his office? Looking at her daughter's message, Gloria remembered how Jasmine had stood in the police station, straight-backed and clear-eyed, identifying her would-be abductors without flinching. Let me talk to her, she finally said. Detective Martinez nodded. The press conference is at 2 p.m. tomorrow. Just think about it. Back in the ER, Gloria found a quiet moment to call her daughter. Chess? Huh, she said when Jasmine answered. Sarah says I'm a natural, Jasmine replied, and Gloria could hear the smile in her voice. How's work? Baby. Detective Martinez came to see me. A pause. About the men. Yes. And they want you to speak at a press conference tomorrow. Tell your story. Another pause. Longer this time. Will it help? Help other kids? Gloria's throat tightened. Maybe. But you don't have to. I want to, Jasmine interrupted. If it might help even one person. I want to. You're sure? Mom, Jasmine's voice was steady. Remember what you always tell me? About standing up. Gloria wiped her eyes. Stand up straight and speak your truth. Exactly. The next day, the police station's press room was packed. News cameras lined the back wall. Families filled the seats, parents clutching pictures of young girls who'd been targeted but hadn't been as lucky as Jasmine. Mr. Thompson sat in the front row beside Gloria, both watching as Jasmine stood at the podium, looking small but determined. "I was scared," she began, her voice clear in the hushed room. "But I remembered what I'd learned from my mom, from school, from Officer Martinez's safety class. Bad things happen when you're quiet. When you're alone." Camera flashes went off. Jasmine didn't flinch. "So I found help. I looked for someone safe, someone in a public place, someone with authority. And when I found him," she glanced at Mr. Thompson, "I spoke up." Gloria watched her daughter, tears rolling down her cheeks, as Jasmine continued. "To any other kids out there who might be scared, you're not alone. There are people who will help you. But you have to be brave. You have to speak up." After the press conference, families surrounded them. Mothers hugged Jasmine, thanking her through tears. Fathers shook her hand solemnly. Detective Martinez stood nearby, watching with satisfaction as reporters scribbled in notebooks and cameras rolled. "Your daughter," she said to Gloria, "just changed how we teach kids about personal safety. Her story, it's going to save lives." Later that evening, back in Mr. Thompson's study room, Jasmine sat at her usual spot, trying to focus on her homework. Sarah brought her hot chocolate. It had become their routine. "You did good today, kid," she said, setting down the mug. Jasmine smiled, thinking about all the families she'd met. All the thank yous. All the tears and hugs. "I just did what felt right," she said. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mom. "Proud of you, baby. So proud." Jasmine looked out the window at the street below. Her street now, safe again because she'd refused to be a victim. She typed back, "Love you, Mom. See you at 6. Then she turned back to her homework, knowing that somewhere out there, another kid might be watching her story on the news, learning that it's okay to be scared. It's what you do with that fear that matters. The school cafeteria buzzed with afternoon energy as Jasmine sat with her lunch tray, trying to ignore the whispers and glances from other students. Ever since the press conference last week, she'd become something of a minor celebrity at Lincoln Middle School. "There she is," Tanya announced, dropping into the seat across from her. "The famous Jasmine Williams." "Stop," Jasmine groaned, but she was smiling. "Did you see? They are putting up new security cameras around the school," Tanya said, unwrapping her sandwich. "Because of you." Principal Chen had called an assembly that morning to discuss new safety measures. Jasmine had sat in the back, trying to blend in, but everyone kept turning to look at her. "It's not because of me," she argued. "It's because of what happened." "What happened to you?" Tanya corrected. "And how you handled it." Jasmine's phone buzzed in her pocket, not the new emergency phone from Mr. Thompson, but her regular one that Mom had finally replaced. It was a message from Sarah. "Chess rematch after school." She smiled, typing back, "Only if you promise not to let me win this time." Sarah's response came quickly. "Never let you win. You're just that good." The past 2 weeks had settled into a new routine. School, then straight to Mr. Thompson's building, where she split her time between homework and chess lessons with Sarah. Sometimes Mr. Thompson would join them, sharing stories about his daughter, the other Sarah, and how she used to love chess too. Earth to Jasmine. Tanya waved a hand in front of her face. "You zoned out again." "Sorry," Jasmine said. "Just thinking about the interview tomorrow." Jasmine nodded. After the press conference, a local news station had requested a sit-down interview. Mom had initially refused, but Jasmine convinced her it was important. "What if some other kid sees it?" she'd argued. "What if it helps them know what to do?" The reporter was coming to Mr. Thompson's building after school tomorrow. They'd film in the lobby, where it all happened. "Are you nervous?" Tanya asked, stealing one of Jasmine's French fries. "A little," Jasmine admitted. "But Mom and Mr. Thompson will be there. And Officer Rodriguez." "Yeah, she's coming too." The police had maintained a visible presence around the school since the arrests. Officer Rodriguez often parked a patrol car along Jasmine's walking route, just in case. The bell rang, signaling the end of lunch. As they gathered their trays, a younger student approached their table. Jasmine." The girl looked about 10, clutching her books tight. "Can I ask you something?" "Sure," Jasmine said, recognizing the fear in the girl's eyes, the same fear she'd felt that day. I think someone's been following me home from soccer practice. the girl whispered. I'm scared to tell my mom because she'll make me quit the team. Jasmine set her tray down, giving the girl her full attention. What's your name? Maria. Okay, Maria. First thing, you need to tell your mom. And your coach. But dash, no buts, Jasmine said firmly. Being safe is more important than soccer. Trust me. Tears welled in Maria's eyes. I don't want to be scared all the time. Then let people help you, Jasmine said, remembering Detective Martinez's words. That's what being brave means, asking for help when you need it. After school, Jasmine told Sarah about Maria during their chess game. You handled that well, Sarah said, moving her bishop. Check. Jasmine studied the board, thinking. I just told her what I wish someone had told me before. You know, before you had to figure it out yourself. Sarah suggested. Checkmate. By the way, Jasmine groaned at the loss, then grew serious. Do you think it ever stops? Being scared? Sarah set the pieces back up carefully. I think being scared is normal. Smart, even. But you can't let it control you. That's what Mom says. Your mom's a wise woman. Sarah smiled. Ready for another game? Later that evening, as Gloria walked Jasmine out to their car, Mr. Thompson called from his office window. All set for tomorrow. Jasmine gave him a thumbs up. Ready. In the car, Gloria glanced at her daughter. You sure about this interview, baby? We can still cancel. Mom, Jasmine said patiently. Remember Maria today? There are other kids out there who need to hear this. Gloria reached over, squeezing Jasmine's hand. When did you get so grown up? Probably around the time I learned that being scared doesn't mean you're weak, Jasmine replied. It just means you're smart enough to know when to ask for help. They drove home in comfortable silence, the setting sun painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Jasmine thought about Maria, about the interview tomorrow, about all the things she'd learned in the past 2 weeks. Sometimes the scariest moments in life become the most important ones. Sometimes being afraid leads you to exactly where you need to be. And sometimes, just sometimes, the very thing that threatens to break you becomes the thing that makes you stronger. The morning sun streamed through the windows of Mr. Thompson's lobby as the news crew set up their cameras. Jasmine sat in one of the plush chairs, watching as the reporter, Lisa Chen, reviewed her notes. Ready? Lisa asked, settling into the chair opposite Jasmine. Gloria stood off camera with Mr. Thompson and Officer Rodriguez, all watching proudly as Jasmine nodded. Rolling in 3, 2, 1. The cameraman signaled. I'm here with Jasmine Williams, Lisa began, the 12-year-old whose quick thinking and bravery led to the arrest of 2 men connected to multiple attempted abductions across the state. Jasmine, take us back to that day. Jasmine sat up straight, just like she'd practiced. I was walking to the library after school, like I always did. My phone was dead, and I noticed a car following me. As she told her story, Jasmine watched the adults' reactions. Her mother wiping tears. Mr. Thompson nodding encouragingly. Officer Rodriguez standing tall and proud. What made you choose this building? Lisa asked, gesturing to the lobby. This specific person to ask for help? I remembered what we learned in school about safe adults, Jasmine explained. Look for someone in authority, someone in a public place. Mr. Thompson looked safe. And he was, Lisa smiled. He was, Jasmine agreed. But you know what I learned? The real hero that day wasn't Mr. Thompson, or even me. It was all the people who taught me what to do. My mom, my teachers, Officer Martinez at school. They gave me the tools I needed before I even knew I'd need them. Lisa leaned forward. What would you say to other kids who might be watching? Trust your instincts, Jasmine said firmly. If something feels wrong, it probably is. And don't be afraid to ask for help. There are good people out there who want to protect you. After the interview, Lisa shook Jasmine's hand. That was perfect. It'll air tonight at 6. As the crew packed up their equipment, Maria, the young girl from school, burst through the lobby doors with her mother. Did we miss it? She asked breathlessly. The interview just finished, Jasmine said. But why aren't you in school? Maria's mother stepped forward. We wanted to thank you, Jasmine. After what you told Maria yesterday, she finally told me about being followed after soccer practice. Officer Rodriguez moved closer, instantly alert. Have you filed a report? Yes, this morning, Maria's mother nodded. They are increasing patrols around the soccer field. and the coach is implementing a buddy system for all players. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat. You know, we have another study room available. If Maria needs a safe place after practice. And just like that, plans were made. Maria would join Jasmine in the study rooms. Sarah agreed to teach them both chess. Officer Rodriguez would coordinate with the soccer coach about new safety protocols. One moment of bravery creating ripples of change. Later that evening, Jasmine sat with her mother watching the interview air on TV. You looked so grown up, Gloria said softly. I felt grown up, Jasmine replied. Different, you know. Different how? Jasmine thought for a moment. Like, before, I was just trying to be safe because you and everyone told me to. Now I understand why it matters. And I want to help other kids understand too. Her phone buzzed. A message from Tanya. You're on TV. My little sister's watching with me. She says you're her hero. Another message popped up. This one from Sarah. Chess champion and TV star? Save some talent for the rest of us. Then Maria. Thank you again. Mom says I can stay on the soccer team. Jasmine smiled, typing quick replies. Her two phones sat side by side on the coffee table, the regular one full of friends' messages, the emergency one from Mr. Thompson ready if ever needed. Mom, she asked during a commercial break. Remember how you always said bad things happen when people stay quiet? Yes, baby. Well, good things happen when people speak up too. Gloria pulled her daughter close. They sure do, baby. They sure do. The next morning, Jasmine walked to school with her head held high. Students still whispered as she passed, but now she understood. They weren't just seeing the girl who got away. They were seeing someone who showed them how to be brave. At lunch, she and Tanya were joined by Maria and two other girls from the soccer team. They talked about safety strategies, shared stories, made plans. After school, the study room was full. Jasmine, Maria, and three other students whose parents had heard about Mr. Thompson's offer of a safe space. Sarah brought hot chocolate for everyone. Going to need a bigger chess set, she joked. Mr. Thompson stopped by, smiling at the busy room. My Sarah would have loved this, he said quietly to Jasmine. She always wanted to help people too. Officer Rodriguez drove by, waving through the window. The security guard, John, did his rounds, checking on everyone. And Jasmine sat in the middle of it all, doing her homework, teaching chess moves, sharing safety tips, being exactly who she needed to be, not just a survivor, but a protector. Her phone buzzed. Mom checking in. Everything okay, baby? Jasmine looked around the room, at Maria laughing with her new friends, at Sarah teaching chess, and Mr. Thompson watching proudly from his office. Everything's perfect, Mom, she typed back. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Because sometimes the scariest moment of your life becomes the moment that defines you. Sometimes running from danger leads you straight to your purpose. And sometimes, just sometimes, a terrified little girl discovers she's not so little anymore. She's a beacon, a guardian, a light in the darkness for others to follow. And that's a pretty good new normal to have.